Welcome to Monk's Temple. Tonight, as you get comfortable and ready to close your eyes, you're not setting off on a trip across the world. Instead, you're beginning a journey inward, a journey into the heart of ancient Buddhist wisdom that has calmed restless minds for thousands of years. This isn't just a talk. It's an experience. As your breath deepens and your muscles relax, let yourself be carried away to a place where time feels different, where every single moment is rich with significance, a place where even the hardest experiences hold a hidden purpose. Let the worries of the day fade. Feel the tension leaving your shoulders, your hands, your jaw. For the next few hours, you'll explore one of Buddhism's most profound insights, that nothing in life is a meaningless accident. Everything happens for a reason. Welcome to Monk's Temple. Let's begin. You wake at sunrise in a small monastery tucked high in the misty mountains. The air is cool and smells of pine needles and burning incense. You came a long way to get here, searching for answers. Why does life so often feel like a series of random, difficult tests? Today, an old monk has agreed to see you. Sitting across from him on a well-worn cushion, he offers a gentle smile. You wish to understand why suffering visits you, he says, his voice as smooth as a calm lake. What if I told you that in the Buddhist teaching, there are no accidents? The old wooden floor creaks softly as you adjust your position. The monk's eyes twinkle. Like you, these boards understand change. They know impermanence. You notice your breath in the chilly air, little clouds that form and then vanish. Here one moment, gone the next. Just like everything else. You think of the river you crossed to reach this place, how the water rushing past you is never the same water from one second to the next. And yet, the river remains. The monk follows your gaze toward the window. Your mind is like that river, he observes. Always moving, never still. This is impermanence. It's one of the core truths of our existence. Your thoughts drift to your own past, mistakes you've made, people you've lost, chances that slipped away. The weight of it all feels heavy. The monk seems to understand. With every breath, you are creating karma, he explains as morning light starts to fill the room. Every action, every thought, every word sets a consequence into motion, just like when you tossed a stone into the river on your way here. You remember that small stone, the perfect rings expanding across the water's surface, touching the reeds, the bank, everything. Maybe your whole life works that way, you say quietly. The growing light now illuminates specks of dust dancing in the space between you. The monk's face is lined with age, etched with both kindness and the marks of a long life. Perhaps joy and sorrow aren't opposites after all. Tell me, he says softly. What weighs most heavily on your heart? What question brought you over these mountains? You take a moment to find the words. Life seems random, you finally say. I try to do the right thing, to be a good person. But hardship still finds me. Meanwhile, I see people who are careless, even cruel, who seem to thrive. Where is the justice in that? Where is the meaning? The monk nods slowly, as if he's heard this countless times before. This trouble, this sense of unfairness, is natural. We are wired to look for patterns, for fairness. We crave meaning. When the world seems chaotic or unjust, we feel unmoored, lost. He stands up, fluid despite his years, and gestures for you to follow. Walk with me. Some lessons are understood better in motion. You follow him through paper-lined doors into a corridor of polished wood. Sunlight streams through high windows, painting patterns of light and shadow that shift with every step. Other monks pass by silently, each focused on their task, yet somehow fully aware of their surroundings. Buddhism teaches that we live in a universe of natural laws, your guide explains as you walk. Just as physical laws, like gravity, operate whether we understand them or not, there are laws governing our inner experience. Moral laws. Cause and effect. The hallway opens into a small courtyard garden. Winding stone paths weave between miniature trees, carefully placed rocks, and raked sand. A tiny stream trickles through the center, its gentle sound a soft background to your conversation. The most fundamental of these laws is karma. The law of cause and effect, he continues, leading you along the path. Every action has an effect. Every cause leads to a result. Nothing occurs without a reason. You've heard the word karma before, but often as a kind of cosmic scorecard. So is karma just fate, you ask? Are our lives already written? The monk shakes his head. He stops beside the stream and kneels, inviting you to join him. He picks up a small, smooth pebble and drops it into a still pool where the water widens. Perfect circles ripple outward. Karma is not fate, he explains. It is the natural law of cause and effect. The pebble makes ripples not because the water is judging it, but because that is the natural consequence. Our choices create ripples in the same way. He takes your hand and places another pebble in your palm. Now, drop this one. But try to make square ripples instead of round ones. You almost smile at the impossibility, but you drop the stone. Circular ripples spread just like before. You see, he says. You cannot change the law of how water responds. Similarly, we cannot change the law that our actions bring consequences. But unlike the stone, which has no choice about falling, we can choose which actions to take. That is our true freedom. The idea begins to take shape in your mind. Not a rigid destiny controlling you, but a vast, living web of causes and effects, many of which you set in motion yourself. If karma is real, you press, why don't we always see it? Why do good people have bad luck, and why do some who cause harm seem to do just fine? The monk stands and leads you further along the garden path. Karma does not always ripen immediately, he says. Some seeds sprout quickly. Others take seasons, or even lifetimes, to bear fruit. The web of causes is vast, stretching across time in ways our limited vision cannot see. You pass a section where younger monks are transplanting seedlings with extreme care. Their hands are gentle, knowing that how they treat these young plants now will shape them for years to come. Like these gardeners, the monk says, we are always planting seeds through what we do, what we say, even what we think. Some fruit quickly. Others may take years. But nothing is ever lost. This new perspective shifts something inside you. Maybe life's randomness is just your limited view of an immense, interconnected pattern you can't fully see. Think of karma like gardening, he elaborates. Some plants mature in days, some in seasons, some over many years. A gardener planting many varieties might be surprised each day by what appears. But nothing grows that wasn't first planted. The path leads to a small, open pavilion that overlooks the entire valley. The monastery clings to the mountainside like a swallow's nest. You sit together on a plain wooden bench, the world spread out below you. From here, we can see far, the monk observes. Villages, fields, rivers, forests, all part of one living system. Yet even this grand view is limited. We cannot see past the horizon. We cannot see inside the mountain. Our view of our own lives is just as limited. A cool breeze carries the scent of pine and the promise of distant rain. You breathe deeply, feeling something deep within you start to relax, a tension you'd carried so long you'd forgotten it was there. From our small, ground-level view, he continues, life can seem random, even cruel. We see one piece of a huge tapestry and mistake it for the whole picture. We experience an effect without seeing its cause. Or we plant a cause but may not live to see its effect. Below, birds soar on unseen wind currents, moving with the air, not against it. They understand its nature and work with it. The Buddhist teachings invite us to widen our perspective, the monk says. To see that our single life is part of a vast, interconnected web of causes and conditions stretching far beyond what our eyes can perceive. Nothing stands alone. Everything is connected. You watch clouds move across the valley, their shadows flowing over the land, a perfect picture of how conditions are always in flux. This understanding doesn't erase life's pain, the monk acknowledges. But it transforms how we meet that pain. Instead of seeing hardship as random punishment or meaningless suffering, we can recognize it as the natural result of causes and conditions, many of which we set in motion with our own past choices. A memory surfaces for you, a relationship that ended in pain after you ignored early warnings. At the time, it felt like a cruel twist of fate. Now, you can trace the chain of choices and circumstances that led, almost inevitably, to that outcome. When we understand karma, the monk says, watching your face, we stop seeing ourselves as victims of random luck. We see our role in creating our experience. This isn't about blame. It's about empowerment. If our past choices help shape our present, then our present choices can shape a different future. The liberation in this thought dawns on you slowly. Life's challenges aren't meaningless punishments. They are natural consequences. And if you can understand the causes, you can plant different seeds for tomorrow. Everything happens for a reason, the monk says again. Not because of a predetermined script, but because the universe operates through this elegant, unshakable law of cause and effect. Nothing is random. Nothing is wasted. Every experience holds meaning and purpose, if we learn how to look. As midday approaches, a deep bell rings out, its clear tone vibrating through the mountain air. The sound seems to emerge from silence and return to it, a living example of the principle you've been discussing. That bell calls us to our midday meal, the monk says. Come. Eating with awareness is another way to experience these teachings directly. You walk together down stone steps back toward the main buildings. Monks gather from all corners of the monastery, from gardens, workshops, meditation halls, coming together in the simple dining hall with quiet purpose. Inside, low tables are set in neat rows. Monks sit on cushions before humble place settings, a bowl, a cup, cloth-wrapped chopsticks. You are shown to a spot along the wall. Once everyone is seated, a deep silence falls. No one reaches for food, though steam rises invitingly from pots at each table's center. The head monk begins a short chant of gratitude, and the others join in, their voices blending into a single, harmonious sound. This chant gives thanks, your teacher whispers when it ends. Thanks for the food, for those who grew it, carried it, cooked it. It recognizes the vast web of causes that brings this simple meal to our bowls. Only then does the serving begin, a calm, orderly, mindful process. Each person receives the same modest portions. No one starts eating until all are served. Before we eat, the monk instructs you, look deeply at your food. Consider its journey. The seed that grew with sun and rain. The farmer who tended it. The many hands that brought it here. See if you can see the whole universe, right there in your bowl. You look at your meal, rice, vegetables, a little tofu, with new eyes. When you consider everything required to create this food and get it here, it feels nothing short of miraculous. Sunlight turned into nourishment. Rain that fell from complex skies. The work of countless beings, seen and unseen. Now, eat with full attention, he suggests. Notice the texture, the temperature, the flavor of each bite. Chew slowly. Be completely with the experience of nourishing yourself. This is mindfulness. The dining hall stays quiet except for the subtle sounds of eating. No conversation, no distraction. Just presence. You try to follow this example, surprised at how different the food tastes when you're actually paying attention. Flavors are brighter. Textures are more distinct. Even plain rice becomes interesting and satisfying. This mindful eating, the monk says between careful bites, shows another piece of Buddhist wisdom. When we are fully present, we discover that ordinary moments contain extraordinary depth. The present moment, fully lived, is infinitely rich. You realize how different this is from your usual meals, eaten quickly, often while distracted by a screen, a conversation, or thoughts about what's next. How much richness have you been missing by not being here, now? Many people rush through life but never truly experience it, the monk observes. They are physically present for precious moments, but mentally they are somewhere else, lost in the past or future. Mindfulness brings you back to the only moment that truly exists, this one. As the meal ends, each person cleans their bowl with a piece of pickled vegetable, then wipes it clean with a cloth. Not a single grain of rice is wasted. The washing water will be poured into the garden. Everything has its purpose in this mindful system. In mindfulness practice, the monk explains, as you follow the cleaning ritual, we discover that life's meaning isn't hidden in some big future achievement. It's found in the depth of our attention to what is happening right now. After the meal, while most monks return to their duties, your teacher invites you to the meditation hall. Unlike the bustle of morning, the large hall is nearly empty, a tranquil space for afternoon practice. Meditation is central to knowing these teachings, he explains, as you settle on cushions facing each other. Not as an idea, but as direct experience. Sunlight filters through paper windows, creating a soft, diffuse glow. The hall smells of polished wood and faint incense. Outside, a bird calls occasionally. The dominant feeling is profound stillness. Good posture helps calm the mind, he instructs. Sit with your back straight, but not stiff, like a mountain, dignified and stable. Rest your hands in your lap. Lower your gaze, or close your eyes if that's comfortable. You adjust, surprised at how these small changes create a sense of both alertness and ease. Now, bring your attention to your breath, he continues, his voice soft but clear. Don't try to control it. Just observe the natural rhythm. Feel the sensations, the air moving through your nostrils, the rise and fall of your chest and belly. You try. Immediately, you see how hard it is to keep your attention on something so simple. Your mind wants to wander, planning, remembering, analyzing, daydreaming. The monk seems to read your thoughts. Each time you notice your mind has wandered, gently bring it back to the breath. This returning is the practice. Every time you notice a distraction and come back, you are strengthening your mindfulness. You practice for several minutes, catching your mind wandering over and over, and guiding it back. It's humbling to see how rarely your mind stays where you put it. The untrained mind is like a wild elephant, the monk explains. Powerful, but uncontrolled. Meditation is how we gently train this elephant, so it serves us rather than tramples our peace. A fly buzzes near your ear, immediately stealing your focus. The monk smiles. Notice how distractions pull you. This is normal. The mind is drawn to what's new or seemingly important. With practice, you learn to notice distractions without being captured by them. You return to your breath, now noticing finer details, the slight pause between inhale and exhale, the coolness of air coming in, the warmth going out. As your concentration deepens, the monk says after a time, you begin to observe not just the breath, but the nature of experience itself. You see how sensations, thoughts, and emotions arise, stay for a while, and then pass away. Nothing is fixed. Everything is in constant flow. This observation connects directly to your earlier talk about impermanence. You can see it happening in real time in your own mind. Each breath, each thought, each feeling appears and disappears like waves on a vast ocean. This direct seeing of impermanence, the monk continues, is crucial to understanding why everything happens for a reason. When you see clearly how one moment leads to the next in your own stream of consciousness, you start to recognize this pattern everywhere. A thought arises, maybe your whole life follows this same pattern, causes and conditions flowing together to create the present, which then becomes the cause for the next moment. Exactly, the monk says, again seeming to understand your unspoken thought. Your life unfolds by this same natural law. Each moment arises because countless causes and conditions come together. Nothing happens randomly. Everything has a reason, a set of causes that brought it into being. You sit with this, feeling it settle not as a theory, but as a felt truth. Your being here, in this monastery, seeking these teachings, this didn't happen by accident. It resulted from countless prior choices, experiences, and conditions all converging to create this moment. As we continue, the monk instructs, expand your awareness. Include your body, your sensations, your emotions, your thoughts, and eventually the space around you. Observe how all these parts of your experience arise and pass according to conditions. You try this wider awareness, noticing the subtle interplay. A sound leads to a thought, which sparks an emotion, which creates a physical sensation. All flowing into each other like streams joining a river. This interconnected flow, the monk explains, is what Buddhism calls dependent origination. The understanding that everything arises in dependence on multiple causes and conditions. Nothing exists alone. Nothing happens without a reason. As your meditation deepens, time behaves strangely. What might be minutes feels like hours. What might be an hour passes in a blink. This, too, is part of the teaching. Even our sense of time is conditioned, not absolute. Eventually, the monk gently brings the session to a close. Enough for now, he says. The body needs movement after stillness. Let's walk in the garden and continue. You stand, feeling stiffness in your legs, but also a new clarity in your mind. Colors seem brighter. Sounds are more distinct. The simple act of walking feels fresh when done with full awareness. Outside, the afternoon sun warms the stone paths. The monastery gardens are tended with great care, not in a way that fights nature, but that works with it. These gardens show another aspect of Buddhist wisdom, the monk says as you walk. The gardeners don't battle the natural tendencies of the plants or the mountain. They understand these conditions and work with them. You pass a twisted pine that has been pruned over decades to accentuate, not correct, its natural lean from growing in rocky soil. This is the middle way the Buddha taught, he continues. Not forcing reality to match our demands, and not just passively surrendering. It's about skillfully working with what is. The path leads to a small pond where lotus flowers float. Some are in full, glorious bloom. Others are still tight buds. Some are just beginning to open. The lotus is a perfect symbol of the Buddha's teaching, the monk says, stopping by the water. It grows from the mud at the bottom, rises through murky water, and blooms, clean and beautiful, on the surface. Our own awakening grows from the very conditions of our ordinary lives, including our difficulties. You watch a dragonfly land delicately on a lotus leaf, making a tiny dimple in the water that sends the smallest ripples outward. Another demonstration of how everything affects everything else. Which brings us to another essential point, the monk says. The purpose of understanding that everything happens for a reason. He finds a bench nearby, and you both sit overlooking the pond. The afternoon light has turned golden, the magic hour, casting a warm glow over everything. Many people, when they first hear about karma, become anxious, he explains. They worry about past mistakes causing future pain. They try to control every little action, afraid of making a bad karma. But this misses the deeper point. A soft breeze stirs the pond's surface, creating dancing patterns of light. The purpose isn't to make you afraid or to give you another burden of getting it right. The purpose is to empower you. To show you that you participate in creating your reality. That many aspects of your experience, especially how you respond to what happens, are within your choice. You consider this, karma not as cosmic punishment, but as a natural law that, once understood, can be worked with skillfully. When difficulties arise, and they will, this understanding helps you respond with more wisdom, he explains. Instead of asking, why me, or how do I escape this, you can ask, what can I learn from this? And how can I respond in a way that creates better conditions going forward? You think about challenges in your own life and how different they might look if you saw them not as random bad luck, but as the natural results of causes and conditions, many of which you had a hand in creating. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for suffering, the monk emphasizes, noting your thoughtful look. Self-blame is just another form of ego, another kind of grasping. It means recognizing your power to plant different seeds now, for a different future. A frog jumps from the bank into the pond with a quiet plop, disappearing beneath the surface. Circles ripple out, touching all parts of the water. See how that small action affects the whole pond, the monk observes. Your actions create ripples, too, far beyond what you can immediately see. Understanding this inspires greater care about the seeds you plant through your choices. As you continue through the monastery grounds, you come upon an elderly monk carefully tending a bonsai tree. His hands, gnarled from decades of work, move with surprising delicacy around the miniature pine. He acknowledges you with a slight nod but stays focused on his task. Your teacher stops to watch. Brother Chen has been training this tree for over 40 years, he explains quietly. Watch his relationship with it. He doesn't impose his will. He understands the tree's nature and works with it. You watch as the old monk makes a tiny adjustment to a branch, securing it with nearly invisible wire. His face shows no impatience, only complete absorption in the task. This is what the Buddha called right action, your teacher continues. Acting with full awareness, understanding causes and conditions, responding to what is with skillful intention, not habitual reaction. The elderly monk finishes his adjustment, steps back, studies the tree from different angles, and nods with quiet satisfaction. He notices your interest and motions you closer. "Would you like to try?" he asks, his voice strong despite his years. He offers you a small pair of trimming scissors. You hesitate, afraid of damaging something cultivated for decades. "I don't know how," you admit. The old monk smiles. "No one does, at first. We learn by doing. By making mistakes. By trying again. This, too, is the way." With some trepidation, you take the scissors. The bonsai master points to a tiny shoot growing from the trunk. "This one should be removed. It disrupts the tree's balance." You carefully position the scissors around the tiny shoot, very aware of both monks watching. A small snip, and it's gone. The old monk nods. "Good. A clean cut, no damage to the bark. The tree will heal well." He takes back the scissors and gives a slight bow before returning to his work. As you walk away, your teacher explains, "That small interaction held much wisdom. You were afraid to act, for fear of making a mistake. How many opportunities in life have you missed from similar fear? You think of times you've held back, playing it safe. Also notice," he adds, "how Brother Chen made a safe space for you to try. He guided without controlling. He allowed you the dignity of your own experience while preventing serious harm. This is how wise teachers work." The path winds upward now, leading to a viewpoint higher on the mountain. The climb requires effort, and conversation pauses as you focus on the ascent. The physical work feels good after sitting. The body teaches wisdom, too, the monk observes as you climb. Notice how it naturally finds efficient ways to move on this uneven path. It doesn't fight gravity or the terrain. It works with these conditions. You realize you've been unconsciously adjusting your gait. Shorter steps on steep parts, shifting your weight differently on loose stones. Your body intuitively knows how to respond. Our bodies often remember what our thinking minds forget, the monk continues. They know how to flow with conditions, not fight them. This natural wisdom is what Buddhist practice helps us recover in all parts of life. You reach a flat area with a breathtaking view of the valley and distant peaks. The afternoon sun casts long shadows, emphasizing the land's contours. From this height, patterns become visible that were hidden below, how rivers follow natural grooves, how forests grow in certain arrangements dictated by soil and sun. From here, we gain perspective, the monk says as you catch your breath. Similarly, Buddhist teachings offer a vantage point to see life's patterns. We start to recognize how certain actions reliably lead to certain results. You notice how the monastery itself is positioned to work with the mountain's features. Nestled in a protected spot, oriented to catch sunlight, placed near natural springs. Nothing fights the conditions. Everything works in harmony with what is. When you understand that everything happens for a reason, arising from causes and conditions, you stop fighting reality, the monk explains. Instead, like the builders of this place, you learn to work skillfully with conditions as they are. A hawk circles overhead, riding thermal currents with minimal effort. It doesn't fight the air. It understands how to use these invisible patterns to soar. This is the freedom Buddhist practice offers, the monk says, watching the hawk. Not freedom from conditions, that's impossible, but freedom within conditions. The wisdom to navigate life's currents like that hawk, with less struggle and more harmony. The sun begins its descent toward the western mountains. Your teacher suggests heading back for evening meditation and the meal. The downhill journey uses different muscles and requires different attention than the climb up. Notice how going down presents its own challenges, the monk observes as you navigate a steep section. In life, too, success and achievement can be as tricky to navigate skillfully as difficulty and struggle. You consider this, how reaching a goal or getting what you want doesn't automatically bring lasting peace. Sometimes achieving what you thought you wanted creates unexpected new problems. The Buddha taught that attachment to outcomes, even good ones, creates suffering, the monk continues. When we cling to how we think things should be, rather than working skillfully with how they are, we create inner conflict. Back at the monastery, preparations for evening are underway. One monk strikes a large bell, its resonant tone marking the transition from day's work to evening practice. Others light lanterns as daylight fades. Before evening meditation, your teacher says, let's look at another aspect of why everything happens for a reason. This is about how we meet life's harder parts. He leads you to a small side garden where stone lanterns create pools of warm light in the gathering dusk. The atmosphere is peaceful, perfect for deeper talk. In every life, he begins, there come challenges that feel meaningless or unfair. Sickness, loss, betrayal, failure. Experiences that can make us wonder if life has any purpose at all. You think of your own difficult times, when suffering seemed random and cruel. Buddhist wisdom doesn't say suffering isn't real or doesn't matter, the monk clarifies. The Buddha's first noble truth acknowledges that suffering exists. But this teaching offers a perspective that can transform how we relate to difficulty. A cool evening breeze stirs the garden, carrying the scent of pine. You pull your robe closer. When we understand that everything happens according to causes and conditions, he continues, we stop seeing problems as random punishments. Instead, we see them as the natural unfolding of complex processes, many influenced by our own past choices and current responses. This shifts something fundamental, from seeing yourself as a helpless victim of circumstance to recognizing your role in both creating and responding to conditions. More importantly, the monk adds, this understanding shows that difficulties themselves have purpose. They are not meaningless, even when painful. They offer precisely the conditions needed for certain kinds of growth that couldn't happen otherwise. He picks up a small, smooth stone from the garden path and places it in your palm. This stone was once rough and jagged. Through friction with water and other stones, it gradually became smooth. What might have looked like damage, being tumbled and scraped, actually revealed its inherent beauty. You feel the stone's perfect smoothness, understanding the metaphor. Maybe life's friction serves a similar purpose, wearing away rough edges to reveal something more essential underneath. The most difficult experiences often create the conditions for our greatest growth, the monk continues. Not because suffering itself is good, but because it challenges our old habits and forces us to develop new capacities. You reflect on how your own painful experiences, hard as they were, led to insights and strengths you might not have gained otherwise. When facing difficulty, he advises, try shifting from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What might this be preparing me for? What qualities is this helping me develop?" This simple reframing can change how you experience challenges. The garden lanterns glow brighter as daylight fades. Their light seems to represent the wisdom that can illuminate even dark times. Everything happens for a reason, the monk says again. Not because of a predetermined plan, but because each experience arises from causes and conditions, and at the same time creates conditions for what comes next. Nothing is random. Nothing is wasted. Everything serves your development, if you have the eyes to see it. The monastery bell rings again for evening meditation. You follow your teacher to the main hall where monks gather, taking their places on cushions in neat rows. Candles and incense create an atmosphere perfect for inner exploration. For this evening practice, the monk explains quietly as you settle, will focus on cultivating equanimity, a balanced mind that stays steady whether experiences are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. You adjust your posture, finding the now familiar balance of alertness and relaxation. The day's conversations have prepared you for deeper practice. Start by bringing awareness to your breath, he instructs. Let your breathing find its natural rhythm. Just observe the sensations with gentle attention. Around you, the other monks sit in perfect stillness, their collective presence creating a palpable field of concentrated awareness. You close your eyes, tuning into your breath. As your mind settles, the teacher continues in a soft voice that carries through the hall. Expand your awareness to include sensations in your body. Notice areas of comfort or discomfort without trying to change them. Just be aware. You scan your body, pressure where you meet the cushion, a slight ache in your back, warmth in your hands, coolness on your face. Each sensation simply is, neither good nor bad in itself. Now notice your emotional state, he guides. Are you calm? Anxious? Peaceful? Impatient? Whatever emotions are present, allow them to be without judgment or resistance. You find a mix of feelings, interest in these teachings, a lingering worry about problems back home, gratitude for this chance. Observing without judgment helps you see these emotions as passing experiences, not defining truths. Expand your awareness further to include thoughts passing through, the monk continues. Watch them arise and pass without getting caught in their stories. See them as clouds moving through the sky of your awareness. This practice reveals how busy your mind is, even here. Plans, memories, questions, judgments, a constant stream. Yet with growing mindfulness, you can observe this stream without being swept away. Now, the monk says after several minutes, contemplate the nature of equanimity. When pleasant experiences arise, notice any tendency to grasp or cling to them. When unpleasant ones arise, notice any tendency to resist or avoid them. When neutral ones arise, notice any boredom or desire for distraction. You observe these tendencies in your own mind, how certain sensations, emotions, or thoughts trigger automatic reactions of attraction or aversion. Equanimity is the balance that comes from understanding that all experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, arise according to conditions and will pass away according to conditions, the monk explains. Nothing needs to be grasped. Nothing needs to be pushed away. Everything can simply be known with clear awareness. This connects directly to your earlier talks about impermanence and cause and effect. If everything arises due to conditions and passes when conditions change, then clinging to pleasant experiences or fighting unpleasant ones makes little sense. When we truly understand that everything happens for a reason, the monk continues, equanimity develops naturally. We stop taking experiences so personally. We see that pleasant and unpleasant alike arise from complex causes, not because we deserve reward or punishment. This perspective offers a profound freedom from the exhausting cycle of craving pleasure and avoiding pain. Maybe peace comes not from controlling what happens, but from how you relate to whatever happens. As we sit these final minutes, the monk instructs, practice meeting each arising experience, sensation, emotion, or thought, with this balanced awareness. Not preferring, not rejecting. Just knowing with clarity. The hall falls silent except for distant temple bells and the sound of breathing. You practice as instructed, watching the parade of inner experiences with growing equanimity. When pleasant things arise, you observe without clinging. When unpleasant things arise, you observe without rejecting. When neutral things arise, you observe without seeking distraction. Something subtle shifts, a spaciousness that wasn't there before. It's as if you're watching the weather of your inner world without being stormed upon. This doesn't remove the experiences, but transforms your relationship to them. After what might be minutes or much longer, time feels fluid in deep meditation. A small bell rings 3 times, ending the formal practice. The monk's voice returns, gentle and clear. As we finish, recognize that the awareness you've cultivated is always available. In every circumstance, pleasant or difficult, you can access this equanimity, this understanding that all experiences arise from causes and conditions and will pass according to their nature. You open your eyes slowly. The meditation hall comes back into focus. Candles flicker, making shadows dance on the walls. Other monks begin to stir, stretching subtly. Carry this practice into your evening, the monk suggests. Notice how experiences continue to arise and pass. Notice your habitual reactions of grasping and rejecting. See if you can keep this balanced awareness through changing circumstances. After meditation, the monastery follows its simple evening routine. A light meal is served with the same mindfulness as lunch. Afterward, some monks gather for quiet conversation, others retire to their quarters for study or rest. Your teacher invites you for tea in a small room overlooking the garden. Lanterns light the pathways below where a few monks still move, completing final tasks. The tea is served simply, hot water over green leaves in plain cups. No sugar, no milk, nothing to mask the natural flavor. The monk encourages you to approach this ordinary act with the same mindfulness practiced in meditation. Receive the cup with both hands, he demonstrates. Feel its warmth. Notice the aroma in the steam. See the color of the liquid. Take a small sip, experiencing the taste fully before swallowing. You follow his guidance, surprised by how much sensory information is available in this simple act when you pay full attention. The tea's slight bitterness, its grassy notes, the way warmth spreads through your mouth, experiences usually missed when drinking on autopilot. Most people move through life missing its richness, the monk observes. They eat without tasting, look without seeing, listen without hearing. Their minds are elsewhere, reviewing the past or anticipating the future. They miss the only moment that truly exists. You consider how often you've been physically present but mentally absent in your own life, missing countless moments because your attention was scattered. This mindfulness practice, he continues, is essential to understanding why everything happens for a reason. When we're not present, we miss the subtle connections between causes and effects. We plant seeds without awareness, then are surprised by what grows. The simple room, lit by a single lantern, feels intimate. Outside, night has fully fallen. Stars appear in the clear mountain sky through the open window. Before you rest, the monk says, I want to clear up a common misunderstanding about Buddhist teachings on cause and effect. He sips his tea, giving you time to settle into this new topic. Many people, hearing that everything happens for a reason according to karma, conclude that victims of misfortune must have done something to deserve their suffering. This is a grave misunderstanding that creates more harm. His eyes meet yours with particular intensity. This point matters deeply to him. The law of karma is not about deserving. It's about understanding how causes lead to effects through natural processes. A child born into poverty, or someone with a terrible illness, hasn't done anything to deserve this in a moral sense. You feel relief at this clarification, having wondered about this troubling implication. These conditions arise from countless causes stretching back through time, most far beyond any individual's control or choice. Understanding karma should lead to greater compassion for those facing difficulty, not judgment or dismissal of their pain. The monk pours a little more tea into your cup. The simple gesture feels like a metaphor for how one action naturally flows into another. True understanding of cause and effect recognizes our deep interconnection, he continues. No one exists in isolation. Your actions affect others. Their actions affect you. We all contribute to the conditions each person experiences. This shifts the focus from individual blame to collective responsibility. Recognizing how social systems, cultural patterns, and shared environments shape individual lives. When we see someone suffering, the monk says, the right response isn't, they must have created this karma. It's, how can I help create better conditions for this person? You think of people in your own life facing challenges. How this understanding might change your response from judgment to compassionate action. This teaching, that everything happens for a reason, isn't meant to explain away suffering or justify injustice, the monk emphasizes. It's meant to empower us to create more skillful causes, for everyone's benefit. The tea has cooled now, revealing different subtle flavors than when hot. Even this simple change demonstrates impermanence. As you take these teachings with you, the monk advises, use them to increase compassion, not judgment. Use them to take greater responsibility for your choices, not to dismiss others' struggles. Use them to create positive conditions moving forward, not to dwell on past regrets. Outside, the monastery grows quieter as monks finish evening routines and prepare for rest. The rhythmic sound of a wooden fish being struck signals the final activities of the day. Tomorrow, we'll explore more, the monk says, finishing his tea. For now, rest. Let what we've discussed settle into your understanding. He leads you back to your simple guest quarters where a sleeping mat has been prepared. The room is austere but comfortable, only what's necessary: a mat, a small table with a candle, a sitting cushion, a pitcher of water with a cup. Before sleeping, the monk suggests, practice a brief reflection on your day. Review significant moments without judgment. Just notice patterns of cause and effect in your experiences and responses. This reminds you of the evening meditation, observing without grasping or rejecting, simply knowing with clarity. Also, set an intention for how you wish to meet tomorrow, he adds. Not rigid expectations about what should happen, but an aspiration for how you will respond to whatever conditions arise. The monk lights the candle on your table, creating a small circle of warm light in the simple room. Rest well, he says with a gentle bow. Remember, everything that happens, even in dreams, arises from causes and conditions, and offers teaching if we have eyes to see it. With that, he leaves you to your evening contemplation. You sit for a time on the cushion, following his suggestion to review the day. So much has been shared. Impermanence, karma, mindfulness, equanimity, all aspects of the central understanding that everything happens for a reason according to natural laws of cause and effect. The teachings feel both profoundly simple and endlessly deep. You notice how your mind tries to grasp these concepts, to solidify them into fixed views. Even this grasping is an instructive demonstration of what the Buddha identified as a cause of suffering, the mind's tendency to cling to ideas, experiences, and outcomes rather than flowing with the natural unfolding of conditions. As the candle burns lower, you prepare for sleep, arranging yourself on the firm mat. Though harder than your bed at home, there's something satisfying about its support. Another small lesson: expectations about comfort can be adjusted with awareness. Lying in darkness, you notice how the mind continues its activity even as the body relaxes. Thoughts about the day. Questions for tomorrow. Memories from home. Plans for applying these teachings. Rather than getting caught in this mental activity, you remember the instruction to observe with equanimity. Each thought is just another passing condition, arising according to causes, existing briefly, then dissolving to make way for the next. As your awareness shifts towards sleep, the boundary between conscious thought and dreaming softens. In this liminal space, the day's teachings continue working within you, rearranging your understanding beyond conscious effort. Your last coherent thought before drifting off is a recognition: everything, absolutely everything, happens for a reason. Not by chance, not by cruel fate, but as part of an intelligent unfolding that invites you to grow in wisdom and compassion with each experience. Sleep comes easily, deeper and more peaceful than usual. For the first time in longer than you can remember, you're not fighting reality. You're learning to flow with it. Morning arrives with the gentle sound of temple bells and the first light of dawn filtering through paper windows. For a moment upon waking, you're disoriented, the unfamiliar room, the firm mat, the different quality of light. Then memory returns. You're in a mountain monastery, learning ancient wisdom about why everything happens for a reason. You sit up, taking the monk's advice to begin the day mindfully. 3 conscious breaths ground you in the present. You set an intention to meet whatever the day brings with openness and awareness, not expectation or resistance. A soft knock at your door announces a young monk with a basin of warm water for washing. The simple courtesy feels deeply kind after the cool mountain night. You wash your face and hands, giving full attention to these ordinary acts as practice in mindfulness. Outside, the monastery is already alive. Monks move purposefully about morning duties, sweeping paths, tending gardens, preparing the morning meal. There's an atmosphere of collective harmony, each person contributing to the whole without apparent ego or conflict. Your teacher from yesterday appears, greeting you with a small bow. "Did you rest well?" he asks. "Very well," you answer, surprised to realize it's true. Despite the simple accommodations, you feel deeply rested. Good. The quiet mind sleeps deeply, he observes. Today, we'll continue exploring why everything happens for a reason, focusing on how this understanding transforms our response to life's more challenging aspects. The morning follows the monastery's rhythm, meditation, a simple breakfast eaten mindfully, brief periods of work contributing to the community. These activities aren't interruptions to the teaching, they are the teaching, opportunities to practice presence in ordinary action. By mid-morning, you join your teacher in the same garden where you began yesterday. The day is clear and cool, the rising sun warming the stone bench where you sit. Yesterday we discussed how everything arises from causes and conditions, the monk begins. Today, let's explore how this understanding helps us work with one of life's greatest challenges, suffering. A butterfly passes between you, its delicate wings catching the sunlight, a perfect illustration of transience. The Buddha's central teaching addressed suffering directly, the monk continues. He didn't promise to eliminate life's difficulties. He offered a path to transform our relationship with them. That path starts with understanding why suffering occurs. You think of your own suffering, from minor irritations to profound losses. And the various ways you've tried to escape or overcome it, often without lasting success. Most people respond to suffering in one of 3 ways, the monk explains. They try to escape it through distraction or denial. They fight against it, creating more suffering through resistance. Or they resign themselves to it, falling into helplessness or despair. These patterns sound familiar. You've experienced all 3. Buddhist wisdom offers a 4th way, he continues. We learn to meet suffering with clear awareness, understanding its causes and conditions, responding with wisdom rather than reaction. A memory surfaces, a painful breakup years ago. You recall cycling through exactly these responses, trying to numb the pain, fighting against reality by trying to win the person back, eventually sinking into temporary despair when nothing worked. Consider a difficult experience from your own life, the monk suggests, seemingly reading your thoughts again. Notice how suffering arose not just from the situation itself, but from how you related to it. You reflect on that ending. The event was painful, yes. But you can now see how much extra suffering came from your resistance, from demanding reality be different, from taking it personally as if the universe were punishing you, from creating stories about what it meant about your worth or future. When we understand that everything happens for a reason according to causes and conditions, the monk explains, we stop taking difficulties so personally. We recognize that painful situations arise not to punish us, but as the natural unfolding of complex processes, many beyond anyone's conscious control. This perspective offers a curious freedom, not from the pain itself, but from the additional layers of suffering created by resistance, personalization, and meaning-making. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent, the monk clarifies, perhaps seeing a question forming. Understanding causes and conditions actually empowers us to respond more effectively. Instead of wasting energy fighting what has already happened, we can focus on creating more skillful conditions moving forward. The sun has risen higher, its warmth more pronounced. Even this simple sensation demonstrates the teaching, conditions constantly change. Let me share a story, the monk says, settling comfortably. It's about a farmer whose experience shows the wisdom of meeting life's events with equanimity rather than quick judgment. You prepare to listen, sensing that stories sometimes convey wisdom better than explanations. There once was a farmer who had worked his land for many years, the monk begins. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. "Such bad luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next morning, the horse returned, bringing 3 wild horses with it. "How wonderful," the neighbors exclaimed. The farmer said, "Maybe." The following day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, was thrown, and broke his leg. The neighbors came again with sympathy for his misfortune. The farmer said, "Maybe." The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing the son's broken leg, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on his good luck. The farmer said, "Maybe." The monk pauses, letting the story settle. What does this simple tale teach us, he asks. You consider the farmer's consistent response. He doesn't rush to judgment, you observe. He doesn't assume he can immediately know whether something is good or bad. Exactly, the monk nods. The farmer has the wisdom to see that no event can be fully understood in isolation. What seems like misfortune today may reveal itself as a blessing tomorrow. What appears as good luck may lead to unexpected difficulty. This challenges your habitual thinking. How often have you immediately labeled experiences as good or bad without seeing their fuller context or long-term implications? This isn't about becoming passive or fatalistic, the monk clarifies. The farmer still takes appropriate action in each situation. But he does so without the extra burden of emotional reactivity based on limited judgment. A question forms, doesn't this approach risk indifference? Shouldn't we celebrate joy and acknowledge sorrow? The monk smiles, appreciating your engagement. Good question. This equanimity isn't about suppressing natural human emotions or becoming coldly detached. It's about not being controlled by emotions that arise from our limited interpretations. He gestures toward the gardens where other monks work. Look at my brothers there. They experience the full range of human emotions, joy in beauty, disappointment in failure, satisfaction in completion. But they work with these emotions rather than being controlled by them. They understand that all experiences arise from causes and conditions and will transform as conditions change. This balanced approach seems both wiser and more sustainable than your usual emotional reactivity. Celebrating good events while resisting bad ones as if your preferences should determine reality. When we truly understand that everything happens for a reason, the monk continues, emotional balance develops naturally. We still feel joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain. But we don't amplify suffering through resistance or create future disappointment through attachment. A small bird lands near your feet, pecks at the soil, and flies off again. Its brief visit, neither good nor bad. Simply part of the natural unfolding, provides another perfect illustration. So how do we develop this wisdom in daily life, you ask, eager for practical guidance? Through both formal practice and moment-to-moment awareness, the monk answers. Meditation trains the mind to observe without immediately judging or reacting. Daily mindfulness applies this training to ordinary experiences. He picks up a small pebble from the path. When something happens, especially something challenging, pause before reacting. In that pause, ask, what conditions led to this? What would happen if I resist this reality? What response would create more positive conditions moving forward? The simplicity of this practice belies its power. Just pausing before reacting could transform many difficult situations. Also helpful, the monk suggests, is regularly reflecting on past experiences where your initial judgments proved limited. Times when apparent misfortunes led to unexpected growth, or when seeming successes created unforeseen complications. This builds confidence in the wisdom of suspended judgment. You think of experiences that seemed devastating at the time but later revealed hidden benefits, jobs lost that led to better opportunities, relationships ended that created space for growth, plans failed that redirected you. Everything truly does happen for a reason, the monk reiterates, unfolding according to innumerable causes and conditions, most beyond anyone's complete understanding. When we grasp this truth, not just intellectually, but experientially, we find freedom from the exhausting cycle of attachment and aversion that creates so much unnecessary suffering. As midday approaches, clouds gather over distant mountains, suggesting afternoon rain. Your teacher notices your glance. Weather is a perfect example of our teaching, he observes. Countless conditions, temperature, pressure, humidity, wind patterns, interact to create what we experience as a single event, rain. No one controls these conditions. Yet they unfold according to natural laws, not random chance. The monastery bell rings for the midday meal. Monks begin moving toward the dining hall, their morning activities concluding in synchrony. Let's join the others, your teacher suggests. The afternoon meal is another opportunity to practice mindfulness, to experience directly how everything, even eating, happens for specific reasons according to conditions. As you walk, the monk continues. Understanding that everything happens for a reason doesn't mean we become passive. We still act, but with greater wisdom. We work with conditions rather than against them, creating causes likely to lead to beneficial effects. You enter the dining hall where monks take their places in the same ordered, mindful manner. The simple room has no decorations, just low tables, cushions, and the necessities for the meal. Before we eat, the monk whispers as you sit, observe the entire process that brings this food to us. The sunshine, rain, and soil that nourished the plants. The farmers who tended them. Those who transported, stored, and cooked this food. The monastery economy that allows us to have what we cannot grow ourselves. See the web. After the meal, many monks rest during the hottest part of the day. Your teacher suggests walking meditation in a covered portico that offers shade while allowing air to circulate. Walking meditation provides another method for experiencing how everything happens according to conditions, he explains as you begin walking slowly side by side. Pay attention to the complex coordination required for this seemingly simple act. You bring awareness to the process, shifting weight, lifting a foot, moving through space, placing it down. Countless muscles, nerves, and brain functions work together to create what you usually take for granted as walking. Notice how each step depends on the previous step and creates conditions for the next, the monk instructs. This is how all of life unfolds. Each moment arises from previous conditions and simultaneously creates conditions for what follows. The covered walkway circles the main meditation hall, offering glimpses of the courtyard garden through evenly spaced columns. Your pace is much slower than normal, not artificially slow, but paced to allow full awareness of each movement. When walking normally, the monk observes, we rarely notice these complex processes. Similarly, in daily life, we seldom see the intricate web of causes and conditions creating each moment. We see results without recognizing their origins. Rain begins falling as predicted, a gentle percussion on the tiled roof above. The timing feels perfect, the covered walkway arranged precisely for this condition. Life functions more harmoniously when we align with rather than fight conditions, the monk continues. Like being in this walkway during rain. We didn't stop the rain, but wisdom anticipated the condition and created appropriate shelter. You complete several circuits in comfortable silence, the rhythm becoming meditative. The rain intensifies, then gradually eases, demonstrating again how all conditions arise, exist temporarily, then transform. As the rain clears, your teacher guides you to continue. Let's visit the monastery library. Something there will help deepen our understanding. The library occupies a quiet corner, a long room with high windows allowing natural light to illuminate ancient texts without damaging them. Shelves line the walls, holding manuscripts, scrolls, and books in various languages, some appearing centuries old. A few monks sit at simple tables, reading or copying texts with careful attention. The atmosphere is one of focused scholarship yet deep peace. Your teacher selects a large, worn volume and places it on an empty table. The book opens to reveal beautiful hand-brushed calligraphy on handmade paper. Though you can't read the language, the text is arranged in verses with occasional faded ink illustrations. This contains the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination, the monk explains, carefully turning aged pages. It expresses in detail why everything happens for a reason. How all phenomena arise, exist, and cease in dependence upon conditions. He finds the passage and translates, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. The simplicity of these lines belies their profound implications. This teaching describes reality at all scales, the monk explains. From the formation of galaxies to the arising of a single thought. Nothing comes into being independently. Everything depends on conditions. You consider examples. A plant depends on seed, soil, water, sunlight. A thought depends on prior experiences, current stimuli, brain function. A relationship depends on countless interactions and shared circumstances. This understanding transforms how we see ourselves, the monk continues. The separate, independent self we imagine is actually a process unfolding in dependence on countless conditions. Physical, psychological, social, environmental. This challenges your habitual sense of being a fixed, independent entity. If you exist as a process rather than a thing, continuously shaped by and shaping conditions, then the boundaries between self and world become more permeable than usually imagined. When we recognize that we, too, happen for reasons according to conditions, the monk explains, we hold our identity more lightly. We stop taking experiences so personally. We understand our thoughts, emotions, and reactions as conditioned processes rather than defining truths. The library's peaceful atmosphere supports this contemplation. The quiet rustle of pages, the gentle movements of monks in study, the shifting patterns of light as afternoon progresses. This understanding of dependent origination reveals why everything happens for a reason in the deepest sense, the monk continues. Not because of a divine plan or fate, but because nothing can exist or occur independently of conditions. He carefully closes the ancient text with reverence. The Buddha wasn't expressing philosophy for its own sake. He taught this to liberate us from suffering, to show how attachment to what cannot last creates distress, and how understanding these processes creates freedom. Outside, sunlight returns after the rain. Moisture-laden air creates a particular luminescence. Raindrops on leaves catch light like tiny jewels. Let's return to the garden, your teacher suggests. Nature often demonstrates these teachings more directly than words. As you walk, he explains, in Buddhism, we use the image of Indra's net to illustrate interconnectedness. Imagine a vast net extending infinitely in all directions. At each intersection hangs a perfect jewel that reflects all other jewels in the net. Each jewel contains the reflection of all others, and each of those reflections contains all others, infinitely. This beautiful metaphor helps you visualize interdependence, how everything exists in relationship to everything else, with no truly separate phenomena. This understanding of interconnection is essential to grasping why everything happens for a reason, the monk continues. Your actions affect others. Their actions affect you. Environmental conditions affect social systems. Social systems affect environmental conditions. Nothing exists or happens in isolation. The path leads to a small pond that has overflowed slightly from the rain. Water lilies float on the surface, drops still visible on their perfectly water-repellent leaves. A frog rests partially submerged at the edge, its presence creating tiny ripples. Consider this pond, the monk suggests. It exists because of specific geography creating a depression, rainfall providing water, plant and animal life establishing balance. If any condition changes significantly, drought, pollution, removal of key species, the entire ecosystem transforms. He kneels beside the water, inviting you to do the same. Look closely at your reflection, he instructs. You lean forward, seeing your face wavering on the water's surface, distorted by subtle movements. Just as this reflection exists dependent on water, light, and your position, the monk explains, what you think of as yourself exists dependent on countless conditions, body, memories, relationships, environment, culture, language. Change any significant condition, and your experience of self transforms. This perspective challenges your sense of being a fixed, independent entity. If you exist as a process, continuously shaped by conditions, then identity is more fluid than usually assumed. When we truly understand dependent origination, the monk continues, we hold our sense of self more lightly. We stop taking experiences so personally. We recognize thoughts, emotions, and reactions as conditioned processes rather than defining truths. A dragonfly lands briefly on a reed, its iridescent wings catching sunlight before it darts away, a momentary manifestation of countless conditions coming together, existing briefly, then transforming. This recognition transforms how we relate to suffering, the monk explains. Instead of asking why is this happening to me, as if suffering were personal punishment, we understand this is happening because conditions support it. This shift creates space for wise response rather than reactive struggle. You consider how differently you might approach difficulties with this perspective. Less personalization, less resistance, more focus on understanding conditions and creating skillful change where possible. The Buddha expressed this wisdom through 4 noble truths, your teacher explains as you both rise. The first acknowledges suffering exists. The second identifies craving and attachment as its cause. The third asserts suffering can end when its causes end. The fourth outlines the practical path to this liberation. These truths frame a logical approach. Identifying a problem, suffering, its cause, attachment, the possibility of resolution, cessation, and a method, the Eightfold Path. Let's explore how understanding everything happens for a reason relates to these truths, the monk suggests. The path ascends slightly to a viewpoint overlooking both monastery and valley. The afternoon sun casts long shadows, emphasizing depth and contour. From this height, patterns become visible that couldn't be seen at ground level. The first noble truth simply acknowledges reality. The monk begins as you settle on a stone bench. Suffering exists in human life. We experience physical pain, illness, aging, death. We face psychological distress, fear, loneliness, disappointment, grief. These experiences are universal. You reflect on your own encounters with suffering, from minor frustrations to profound losses. The acknowledgement feels honest, neither minimizing nor catastrophizing. The Buddha didn't teach this to depress us, but to begin from honest recognition, the monk clarifies. Much like a doctor must accurately diagnose an illness before treatment, we must squarely face suffering's reality before finding its cessation. A cool breeze passes through, causing leaves to flutter, a reminder of constant change. The second noble truth identifies why suffering happens, your teacher continues. It arises from tanha, usually translated as craving or thirst. Our habitual tendency to grasp at pleasant experiences and push away unpleasant ones. This resonates. How often has suffering intensified not from what happened, but from your desperate wish that reality be different? When we don't understand that everything happens for a reason according to conditions, the monk explains, we take events personally. We demand reality conform to our preferences. We cling to what's pleasant as if it could last forever. We fight what's unpleasant as if rejection could make it disappear. The view shows the monastery as part of a larger landscape, nested within mountains, forests, valleys, sky. Similarly, your individual life exists within larger systems of cause and effect stretching far beyond personal preferences. The third noble truth offers hope, the monk continues. When we understand that suffering arises from our relationship to experience rather than from experience itself, we discover the possibility of liberation. If clinging creates suffering, release creates freedom. This challenges conventional thinking. Most seek happiness by trying to arrange external conditions perfectly, the right relationship, job, home, achievements. But if suffering originates from how we relate to conditions rather than the conditions themselves, then freedom might be found through inner transformation rather than external control. The fourth noble truth provides the practical path, your teacher explains. It outlines how to live from this understanding, through right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. These 8 aspects work together, transforming how we perceive and respond to life. The comprehensive nature of this path impresses you, addressing understanding, motivation, communication, behavior, work, energy, awareness, and mental cultivation. Not a simplistic solution, but a complete reorientation. When we truly understand that everything happens for a reason according to causes and conditions, the monk continues, we naturally develop right view, the foundation of the entire path. We stop taking events personally, blaming others unfairly, or fighting against reality as it unfolds. From your vantage point, you watch clouds move across the valley, their shadows flowing over the land like water. The perspective makes it easier to see how all elements interact: sunlight, air currents, moisture, temperature, creating constantly changing conditions below. Right view naturally leads to right intention, your teacher explains. When we understand how suffering arises from grasping and aversion, we naturally intend to cultivate release, goodwill, and harmlessness. You consider how your own intentions might shift with deepening understanding, less driven by craving for specific outcomes, more oriented toward wisdom and compassion regardless of circumstances. These first two concern wisdom, the monk says. The next three, right speech, right action, right livelihood, concern ethical conduct. When we understand that everything happens for a reason according to conditions, we recognize how our words, actions, and work create ripples affecting ourselves and others. Birds soar below, riding invisible air currents with effortless grace. They neither fight these conditions nor try to control them. They understand their nature and work with them skillfully. The final three, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, concern mental development, your teacher continues. They train the mind to see clearly, remain present, and respond wisely rather than react habitually. The sun begins its gradual descent, the light shifting toward golden afternoon tones. This, too, reminds you of impermanence, how even the seemingly reliable sun appears to move, creating constantly changing conditions of light and shadow. This entire path emerges naturally from deeply understanding that everything happens for a reason, the monk summarizes. When we recognize that all phenomena arise, exist, and cease according to conditions, we stop fighting reality and start working skillfully within it. As you sit absorbing this, a temple bell rings in the distance, signaling a transition. Your teacher suggests returning for afternoon meditation. The teachings we've discussed are valuable intellectually, he explains as you descend, but their real power comes through direct experience in practice. Back in the meditation hall, monks gather. The atmosphere feels different from morning practice, perhaps because of the day's accumulated awareness or the particular quality of afternoon light filtering through paper windows. You take your place, arranging your posture, back straight but not rigid, hands resting, gaze softly lowered. The collective presence creates a palpable field of concentrated awareness supporting your own practice. This afternoon, your teacher explains, once all are settled, we'll explore a meditation that directly investigates dependent origination, how phenomena arise from conditions, exist temporarily, then cease as conditions change. He guides initial settling through breath awareness, allowing the mind to become stable and clear. After several minutes, he introduces the investigation. As you sit, notice how sensations arise in your body. When aware of a particular sensation, perhaps pressure where you contact a cushion or warmth in your hands, investigate its nature. Does it remain constant or change? What conditions support its appearance? What happens as those conditions shift? You follow, bringing attention to bodily sensations with genuine curiosity. You notice a slight discomfort in your lower back that wasn't apparent earlier. Observing without immediate reaction, you discover it's not a static experience but a complex, changing process. Moments of sharpness followed by dullness, intensifying then fading, moving slightly. Now expand awareness to include emotions, the monk continues after several minutes. Notice what feelings are present: peace, restlessness, contentment, impatience. Observe how each emotion arises from specific conditions and changes as conditions change. You discover subtle anxiety, perhaps concern about doing it right. Observing this feeling with curiosity rather than judgment, you notice how it's supported by thoughts about performance. When attention shifts to simple observation rather than evaluation, the anxiety gradually transforms. Next, notice thoughts themselves, your teacher guides. Watch how they appear in consciousness, exist briefly, then dissolve. Can you observe the conditions giving rise to particular thought patterns? This observation reveals how thoughts aren't random. They arise from specific conditions, external stimuli, bodily sensations, emotional states, previous thoughts, habitual patterns. No thought simply appears from nowhere. Each emerges from a complex web. Finally, expand awareness to notice consciousness itself, the monk suggests, his voice increasingly subtle. This awareness that knows sensations, emotions, thoughts. Observe how it, too, arises according to conditions. When tired, consciousness has certain qualities. When concentrated, it manifests differently. This level of observation feels more challenging yet more spacious. You begin to recognize how even awareness isn't a fixed entity but a dynamic process responding to changing conditions, clearer or duller, focused or scattered, expanded or contracted depending on circumstances. In this investigation, the teacher explains quietly, we directly experience how everything happens for a reason according to conditions. Nothing in our experience exists independently or remains unchanged. Everything flows in the continuous dance of arising and passing away. The meditation continues in silence, each practitioner exploring this territory of direct observation, the collective energy supporting sustained attention. After what might be 20 minutes or longer, time feels fluid. A small bell rings 3 times, signaling conclusion. The monk offers final guidance as everyone gradually returns to ordinary awareness. Let this understanding of dependent origination infuse your entire experience. When pleasant experiences arise, remember they exist because conditions support them and will change when conditions change. When difficult experiences arise, recognize they, too, depend on specific conditions and aren't permanent realities. You open your eyes slowly. The hall comes back into focus. Afternoon light casts long rectangles through paper windows onto the wooden floor. Other monks shift slightly, some stretching subtly. Carry this awareness into your evening, the monk concludes. Notice how everything you experience, from the taste of food to interactions with others to your own changing mental states, happens for specific reasons according to conditions. As monks disperse, your teacher invites you for a walk outside the monastery walls. The surrounding forest offers another perspective, he explains as you pass through the main gate. The path descends gently through pine forest, the ground soft with needles. The air smells of resin and earth. Bird song provides an intermittent soundtrack along with wind and branches and your own footsteps. Natural environments often make these teachings more accessible, the monk observes. Interconnection and impermanence are plainly visible here for anyone with eyes to see. You notice how different the forest feels from the tended monastery gardens. Here, life expresses itself with less apparent order yet perfect ecological intelligence, dead trees becoming nurse logs for new growth, fungi decomposing fallen branches, insects and birds maintaining balance through feeding patterns. In Buddhism, we don't see nature as separate from ourselves, your teacher explains as you walk. The same principles governing these forest processes govern our inner experience. We, too, are natural systems responding to conditions. The path crosses a small stream via stepping stones. Recent rain has increased its flow, making crossing require careful attention. You focus on each stone, feeling how your movement adapts to these specific conditions. Every action we take resembles crossing this stream, the monk observes when you reach the other side. We respond to conditions as they are, not as we wish them to be. The stones are placed as they are. The water flows as it does. Wisdom lies in working skillfully with these realities rather than demanding they conform to our preferences. Further along, you encounter a fallen tree blocking the path. Rather than being cleared away, steps have been cut into its trunk, creating a natural staircase over the obstacle. This demonstrates another aspect of wisdom, your teacher notes as you climb over. When conditions present obstacles, we can respond in different ways. We might fight reality, demanding the obstacle be removed. We might give up, turning back. Or we might work creatively with conditions as they are, finding a way forward that acknowledges reality while serving our purpose. The forest grows denser, the canopy filtering sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. These shifting light patterns create an almost hypnotic effect as you walk, emphasizing constant change. When we truly understand that everything happens for a reason according to conditions, the monk continues, we stop exhausting ourselves fighting reality. Instead, like these trees growing toward available light, we respond intelligently to conditions as they are. You notice how trees in shade have developed different shapes than those in sun. Stretching taller with fewer lower branches to maximize light exposure. Each has adapted perfectly to its specific conditions. Human suffering often comes from resistance to this natural process, your teacher observes. We demand conditions be different. We refuse to adapt, insisting reality should conform to our fixed ideas. We fight change rather than flowing with it. The path emerges into a small clearing where a flat rock formation creates a natural resting place. Your teacher suggests pausing before returning. The late afternoon sun warms the stone as you sit, a pleasant contrast to the cool forest air. Let me share a teaching story, the monk says as you settle. It illustrates how our limited perspective often prevents us from recognizing deeper purpose within experiences, especially difficult ones. You prepare to listen. There once was a young disciple studying with a renowned meditation master, he begins. The disciple was sincere but impatient, wanting to advance quickly without developing necessary foundations. One day, the master asked him to prepare tea. The young man did so hurriedly, bringing a steaming pot and cups to where the master sat. As he began pouring, the master suddenly struck the disciple's hand, causing him to spill hot tea everywhere. The disciple was shocked and upset. "Master, why did you do that? Now the tea is wasted, and I nearly burned myself." The master pointed calmly to the cup the disciple had been about to fill. Inside was a small scorpion that had fallen in while the cup sat unused. Had the disciple poured the tea, the scorpion would certainly have stung him when he lifted the cup to drink. Sometimes, the master explained, what appears as harm is actually protection. Your limited perspective saw only an aggressive act. My wider perspective saw what would happen if I didn't intervene. The monk pauses, letting the story settle. This simple tale holds multiple lessons, he continues. First, it shows how limited perspective prevents us from recognizing the true nature of events. What appears harmful from one viewpoint may serve a beneficial purpose from a wider perspective. You think of experiences initially perceived as setbacks that later revealed unexpected benefits. Plans that fell through making way for better opportunities, relationships that ended creating space for growth, failures that taught essential lessons. Second, your teacher explains, the story reminds us we rarely see the full web of causes and conditions affecting any situation. The disciple couldn't see the scorpion. He lacked information for accurate understanding. Similarly, we often judge situations without seeing their full context. Birds call as evening approaches, preparing to roost. Their communication, incomprehensible to human ears, serves perfectly within their own system, another reminder of how limited any single perspective must be. Finally, the monk concludes, the story suggests apparent setbacks often protect us from harm we cannot perceive. Paths not taken, opportunities missed, relationships ended. These disappointments may actually shelter us from greater difficulties or clear the way for more appropriate circumstances. This offers a profound reframing of life's challenges, not as random misfortunes to be endured, but as meaningful redirections guiding you toward what truly serves your development. When we understand that everything happens for a reason, your teacher emphasizes, we hold our judgments more lightly. We remain open to the possibility that what seems negative from our limited perspective may serve purposes we cannot yet recognize. The sun dips lower toward mountain peaks, signaling time to return before darkness. You rise from the warm rock, feeling both physically refreshed and mentally stimulated. As we walk back, the monk suggests, practice maintaining awareness of how each step happens for specific reasons. Your intention to return, the path's condition, your body's capabilities, the changing light influencing your pace. Nothing occurs randomly. Everything manifests through the meeting of particular conditions. This mindful walking helps integrate intellectual understanding with direct physical experience. Each step involves countless factors coming together, muscle contractions, neurological signals, balance adjustments, visual processing, yet occurs as a seemingly simple, unified action. This same principle applies to all aspects of experience, your teacher reminds you as you approach the monastery gates. From mundane activities like walking to profound spiritual insights, everything happens for specific reasons according to conditions. Evening settles over the monastery as you return. Lanterns have been lit along pathways, creating pools of warm light in gathering darkness. Monks move quietly between buildings, completing final daily tasks before evening meal and meditation. After dinner, your teacher says, I want to address how understanding that everything happens for a reason transforms our approach to life's greatest challenges, including those that seem meaningless or fundamentally unfair. The evening meal follows the same mindful pattern, a simple grace acknowledging contributions, eating with full awareness, cleaning with attention. Following the meal, while most monks retire to the main hall for evening meditation, your teacher leads you to a small side garden illuminated by stone lanterns. The night air carries a slight chill, stars begin appearing in the clear mountain sky. The atmosphere feels perfectly aligned for deeper teachings. Throughout human history, the monk begins as you settle on a stone bench. People have struggled with experiences that seem meaningless or unjust. Natural disasters that destroy indiscriminately. Children born into suffering. Good people facing terrible misfortune while harmful ones prosper. You think of situations in your own life and the wider world that have raised similar questions, apparent injustices challenging any sense of meaningful order. Many religious traditions answer through concepts of divine will or fate. Your teacher continues. Buddhism offers a different perspective through understanding that everything happens for a reason according to causes and conditions, many extending far beyond what any individual can perceive. A nightbird calls from the darkness, its voice clear and melancholy against crickets and distant water. When facing profound suffering or injustice, the monk explains, Buddhist wisdom doesn't ask us to accept simplistic explanations like everything happens for the best, or it's all part of a plan. Rather, it invites us to recognize the vast complexity of conditions creating each situation. This perspective neither minimizes suffering nor requires belief in cosmic justice. It simply acknowledges reality's immense complexity and our limited ability to comprehend it fully. Natural disasters happen because of geological, meteorological, environmental conditions, your teacher illustrates. Children experience suffering because of social, economic, political, historical conditions. Good people face misfortune and harmful ones prosper because the web of karma extends across lifetimes and involves collective as well as individual actions. Stars continue appearing overhead, their ancient light reaching you after traveling years or centuries through space, a perfect metaphor for how causes create effects across vast distances of both space and time. Understanding that everything happens for a reason according to conditions doesn't explain away suffering or make it disappear, the monk emphasizes, but it helps us respond more skillfully by focusing attention on conditions we can affect rather than wasting energy fighting what cannot be changed. You consider how differently you might approach challenges with this perspective, less entangled in "why me?" or demands for cosmic fairness, more engaged with understanding and addressing conditions within your influence. This understanding also cultivates compassion, your teacher continues. When we recognize that all beings are responding to conditions, many beyond their conscious control, we hold less blame and judgment. The person acting harmfully does so because of specific causes and conditions shaping their understanding and choices. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but recognizing its conditioned nature, how factors like childhood experiences, cultural programming, neurological patterns, environmental pressures shape actions that appear as free choices. Most importantly, the monk emphasizes, this understanding empowers us to create different conditions moving forward. While we cannot change what has already occurred, we can establish causes likely to produce more beneficial effects for ourselves and others. The stone lanterns cast gentle light that doesn't extend far into surrounding darkness, like human understanding illuminating a small circle of the vast unknown. Yet this limited light provides enough to navigate the immediate environment safely. When facing life's greatest challenges, your teacher concludes, remember that understanding why everything happens for a reason isn't about passive acceptance, but wise discernment. It helps us distinguish what can be changed from what must be accepted, then respond with both compassion for what is and commitment to creating more beneficial conditions for what will be. As evening deepens, the main bell rings for final meditation. Monks gather in the hall where candles create islands of soft light in darkness. The atmosphere feels both peaceful and charged with collective intention. For tonight's practice, your teacher explains as you take your place, we'll explore how understanding that everything happens for a reason transforms our relationship with difficult emotions. The hall settles into silence as practitioners arrange themselves. Only occasional sounds of shifting bodies and distant night creatures interrupt the profound quiet. Begin by settling awareness in the present moment, the monk instructs, his voice gentler than daytime. Notice your breath, your body sensations, points of contact with floor and cushion. Allow yourself to be fully here. You follow, feeling how different evening meditation feels, the body carrying the day's accumulated experiences, the mind holding impressions from hours of practice and teaching. Now bring to mind a moderately difficult situation from your life, your teacher continues after several minutes of settling. Nothing overwhelming, but something creating noticeable emotional reactivity, perhaps a misunderstanding, a minor setback, an ongoing challenge. You recall a recent work situation involving criticism that felt unfair. Even remembering it creates subtle tightening in your chest and shoulders. Notice what emotions arise as you recall this, the monk guides. Don't suppress or analyze. Simply observe with kind awareness what feelings are present. Where do you experience them in your body? You discover a complex mixture, defensiveness, embarrassment, residual anger manifesting as tension in shoulders, slight flush in face, a knot in stomach. These physical manifestations make emotions tangibly real rather than abstract concepts. Now investigate the conditions supporting these emotions, your teacher instructs. What thoughts accompany these feelings? What beliefs underlie your reaction? What past experiences might influence your present response? This investigation reveals how your emotional reaction depends on specific conditions, thoughts about being misunderstood, beliefs about fairness, previous experiences where criticism led to negative consequences. The emotion isn't a solid thing but a process arising from supporting conditions. Notice how understanding the conditioned nature of emotions creates space around them, the monk suggests. They're no longer solid, permanent realities, but temporary phenomena arising when certain conditions come together. This shift creates subtle but significant change. The emotions themselves don't disappear, but become less overwhelming, less defining, more like weather passing through the sky of awareness than absolute truths. When we truly understand that everything happens for a reason according to conditions, your teacher continues, his voice barely above a whisper, we hold our emotions more lightly. We recognize that anger, fear, jealousy, grief arise not because we're flawed or reality is wrong, but because specific conditions support these states. Candles flicker as a slight breeze finds its way in, creating dancing shadows on walls and ceiling. Like emotions, these shadows are real experiences but not solid realities, dependent on specific conditions of flame, air movement, surfaces for momentary existence. This understanding doesn't mean suppressing emotions or becoming coldly analytical, the monk clarifies. Rather, it allows us to experience feelings fully while recognizing their conditioned, impermanent nature. We neither repress nor indulge. We acknowledge with wisdom. You continue observing the emotional landscape arising from your recalled situation. Noticing how awareness itself gradually changes the experience, physical sensations shifting, tension softening, heat dissipating, constriction opening. Not because you force change, but because sustained non-reactive awareness itself creates new conditions. As our meditation concludes, your teacher says after several more minutes of silent practice, recognize this same approach can be applied to all experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Everything we encounter, external or internal, happens for reasons according to conditions and changes as conditions change. 3 strikes of a small bell signal the session's end. The hall remains quiet as practitioners gradually shift from formal meditation to ordinary awareness. There's a palpable sense of collective settledness, as if shared practice has harmonized the group's energy despite each person following their own inner journey. Carry this understanding into your sleep tonight, the monk suggests as monks begin quietly leaving. Notice how even dreams happen for reasons according to conditions and offer teaching if approached with awareness. Your teacher leads you toward your quarters for the night. The evening is still, the monastery now completely quiet. Tomorrow, he says softly at your door, will be your last day with us. We will bring together all we've explored and prepare you to carry this understanding back into your world. You feel a mix of gratitude and a tinge of sadness at the approaching departure. Rest now, he says with a bow. Let the teachings continue their work in the silence. You enter your simple room. The candle has burned low. You lie on the mat, listening to the absolute quiet of the mountain night. The teachings on dependent origination, cause and effect, impermanence, and the reason behind everything circle gently in your mind, not as frantic thoughts, but as deep, settling truths. You understand now that even your coming here, your readiness for these teachings, happen for specific reasons according to conditions stretching back across your life. Nothing was accidental. Everything prepared you for this. With that recognition, sleep comes, not as an escape, but as another natural process unfolding according to conditions. You drift off with a sense of profound peace, feeling part of a vast, intelligent flow rather than a separate entity struggling against the current. The final morning at Monk's Temple begins not with bells, but with a deep, resonant silence that seems to permeate the very stones of the mountain. You wake naturally, moments before dawn, feeling as if the quiet itself has gently nudged you from sleep. The air in your simple room holds a crystalline quality, as if the night has polished everything clean. You lie still for a few moments, practicing the awareness your teacher has emphasized, noticing the transition from sleep to waking as another example of causes and conditions flowing together. The fading darkness, the temperature of the air, the softening ache in muscles still adapting to the firm sleeping mat, the first birdsong tentative in the distance, all conditions coming together to create this particular experience of waking. You rise and perform your morning washing with deliberate slowness, giving each action your full attention. The cool water on your face, the texture of the coarse cloth, the sound of water droplets falling back into the basin. each sensation offering its teaching about impermanence and direct experience. As you dry your face, you notice something has shifted in your perception. The world doesn't merely look different, it feels different. The solidity of objects seems less absolute, their edges softer, as if you're seeing not just their form but the space they occupy within a larger field of relationships. Your teacher is waiting for you in the courtyard, standing perfectly still as he watches the eastern horizon where the first hint of light begins to define the silhouette of distant peaks against the fading stars. He doesn't turn as you approach, but you sense he's aware of your presence. For several minutes, you stand beside him in silence, watching as the darkness gradually surrenders to dawn. It's not a sudden event but a gradual unfolding. The exact opposite of how we usually think of sunrise. First, the blackness becomes deep blue, then indigo, then violet, then the faintest wash of rose at the horizon. Shapes emerge from formlessness. The world reassembles itself moment by moment. This daily miracle, your teacher says softly, not breaking his gaze from the horizon, is perhaps the most perfect demonstration of our teaching. Everything happens for a reason. Not because a deity commands the sun to rise, but because the earth turns according to natural laws, because atmospheric conditions scatter light in specific ways, because your eyes and brain interpret these wavelengths as color. Countless causes and conditions, all converging to create this experience we call sunrise. And yet, most people see only the result, not the intricate process. They say, the sun is rising, as if it were a simple, singular event rather than the magnificent convergence of innumerable factors. The light strengthens now, painting the undersides of clouds in shades of coral and gold. The monastery buildings begin to emerge from shadow, their simple lines looking both ancient and newly born in this fresh light. Your final day here, your teacher continues, turning to face you at last, will be dedicated to integration. We've explored the teachings intellectually. We've experienced them in meditation. Now, we'll work on weaving this understanding into the fabric of how you perceive and respond to everything. This is perhaps the most important part, taking wisdom from the cushion and the teaching hall into the complexity of ordinary life. He gestures toward the path that leads to the monastery's highest point, a small plateau above even the viewpoint you visited yesterday. Let's walk to where we can watch the sun fully reveal the day. Some teachings are best received in the presence of vastness. The climb is steeper than yesterday's path, following a narrow trail that switchbacks up the mountainside behind the monastery. The air grows thinner, cooler. Your breath comes in visible puffs that catch the growing light. The physical effort focuses your mind wonderfully. Each step requiring attention to footing, to balance, to the interplay between your intention to climb and the mountain's reality under your feet. No abstractions here. Just this step, then the next. After about 20 minutes of steady climbing, you emerge onto a small, flat plateau that seems to hang between earth and sky. The view is staggering. You can see not just the valley below but range upon range of mountains receding into the distance like waves frozen in stone. The monastery looks miniature from this height, a cluster of wooden buildings clinging to the mountainside with what now seems like improbable grace. The world feels both immensely large and perfectly intimate. Your teacher finds a flat rock and sits, motioning for you to join him. The sun has cleared the horizon now, though the plateau remains in shadow, the light just beginning to creep down the opposite peaks. From this vantage point, he says, his voice calm against the vastness, we can speak of the final, most practical aspects of understanding why everything happens for a reason. Let's begin with what might be the most challenging application, dealing with what we call evil or profound injustice in the world. You feel the weight of the question. It's one thing to understand that a personal disappointment has causes you can trace. It's another to confront suffering on a massive scale. War, oppression, cruelty that seems to defy any meaningful explanation. This is where many people struggle with Buddhist teachings. Your teacher acknowledges, seeing the question in your expression before you voice it. If everything happens according to causes and conditions, does that mean we should accept atrocities as just karma playing out? Does it mean we shouldn't work to change unjust systems? He lets the questions hang in the air between you, giving them their proper weight. A hawk circles far below, a tiny speck riding thermal currents you can't see but know must be there. The teaching of dependent origination, of everything happening for reasons according to conditions, is not a philosophy of resignation, he says finally. It is, in fact, the foundation for the most effective kind of action. Let me explain. First, he says, holding up one finger, understanding causes and conditions helps us identify the actual roots of problems rather than just reacting to symptoms. Most attempts to address suffering fail because they attack symptoms while leaving causes intact. If you have a weed in your garden, you can cut it down every day, but if you don't remove the root, it will keep returning. Similarly, if we want to address injustice, we must understand the complex web of conditions that allows it to arise: historical, economic, psychological, educational, environmental conditions. This understanding doesn't make us passive, it makes us strategic. Second, another finger joins the first. This understanding helps us avoid creating new suffering in our attempts to alleviate existing suffering. So much harm in the world comes from good intentions executed without wisdom. From people trying to fix problems without understanding the systems they're intervening in. When we recognize that everything is interconnected, we proceed with greater humility and care, aware that our actions will have ripple effects we can't fully predict. Third, a third finger rises. Understanding karma empowers us with the knowledge that change is always possible because conditions are always changing. Nothing is fixed. No system, no pattern of suffering, no cycle of violence is permanent or unchangeable. Everything arises from specific causes. If we change those causes, we change the results. This is the ultimate antidote to despair and cynicism. The sun has reached your plateau now, its light spilling over the edge like liquid gold, warming your face and hands. The transition from shadow to light happens with startling speed once it begins. Another lesson in how conditions can change abruptly when certain thresholds are crossed. Let me give you a concrete example from our own tradition, your teacher continues. The Buddha lived during a time of significant social upheaval, with warfare between kingdoms, oppressive caste systems, and tremendous inequality. He didn't teach his followers to withdraw from society or accept injustice as just karma. He established a monastic community that deliberately challenged social norms. Accepting people from all castes, including outcasts and women, at a time when this was radical. He taught kings and rulers about ethical governance. He provided a practical path for transforming greed into generosity, hatred into loving kindness, delusion into wisdom. His approach was based on understanding causes and conditions, not on fighting against reality, but on skillfully changing conditions to create different outcomes. You think about this application. Using the understanding of interconnectedness not as an excuse for inaction but as a guide for more effective, compassionate action. It feels like a crucial piece you've been missing. Now, your teacher says, his tone shifting slightly, let's bring this even closer to home. How does this understanding transform your relationship with your own past, with regrets, with things you wish you had done differently? This question strikes a chord. Everyone carries regrets. Choices made or not made, words spoken or unspoken, paths taken or avoided. When we don't understand dependent origination, your teacher explains, we tend to relate to our past in one of two unskillful ways. Either we blame ourselves mercilessly, as if we should have known better or been better than our conditioning allowed, or we blame others or circumstances entirely, avoiding any responsibility. Both approaches create suffering and prevent learning. He picks up a small stone and holds it in his open palm. Consider a past action you regret. At that time, you acted based on the causes and conditions present in that moment, your level of understanding, your emotional state, your past experiences shaping your perception, the information available to you, the pressures you were under, your physiological state, countless factors. Given those exact conditions, could you have acted differently? You think about a specific regret. A time you spoke harshly to someone you cared about. At that moment, you were tired, stressed from work, carrying unresolved feelings from an earlier conflict. Given those exact conditions, could you have responded with patience and kindness? Perhaps not. The conditions weren't present for that response. This doesn't mean we shouldn't take responsibility for our actions, your teacher clarifies, seeing the thought forming. Taking responsibility is actually the mature recognition that our actions have consequences and that we can work to create better conditions for future actions. But there's a world of difference between taking responsibility and indulging in guilt. Guilt says, I'm bad for what I did. Responsibility says, my action caused harm. What conditions led to that action? How can I create different conditions so I'm less likely to cause harm in the future? One looks backward with judgment. The other looks forward with intention to grow. He places the stone back on the ground. When you truly understand that everything, including your past actions, happened for reasons according to conditions, you can look at your past with compassion rather than judgment. You can see your younger self as someone doing their best with the understanding and conditions available at that time. This compassionate understanding doesn't excuse harmful actions, but it creates the psychological safety needed to honestly examine them, learn from them, and commit to doing better. The sun is fully up now, bathing the entire plateau in brilliant morning light. Shadows have retreated to the deepest crevices of the mountainside. The world feels washed clean, full of possibility. This brings us to perhaps the most important practical application, your teacher says, his voice taking on a particular warmth. How this understanding transforms your approach to the future, to planning, to goals, to hopes and fears about what's to come. He gestures to the vast landscape spread before you. From here, we can see far into the distance, but we can't see what lies beyond those farthest mountains. Similarly, we can make plans based on current conditions, but we can't know what conditions will actually arise. Most people suffer tremendously around the future, anxiety about what might go wrong, desperate attachment to specific outcomes, disappointment when reality doesn't match their expectations. You recognize this pattern in yourself, the hours spent worrying about possibilities that never materialize, the disappointment when carefully laid plans fall apart. Understanding that everything happens for reasons according to conditions, your teacher continues, frees us from this suffering in a beautiful way. It allows us to plan and work toward goals while holding those goals lightly, with open hands rather than clenched fists. We do our best to create conditions for beneficial outcomes, but we recognize that countless other factors will influence what actually happens. Our peace doesn't depend on achieving specific results, but on knowing we're responding skillfully to conditions as they arise. He stands and walks to the very edge of the plateau, looking out at the sea of mountains. You join him. Look at this landscape, he says. If you were trying to reach that distant peak there, he points to a distinctive jagged summit many miles away, you wouldn't simply draw a straight line and demand the terrain conform to your plan. You would study the actual conditions, where the passes are, where water can be found, what areas are dangerous. You would prepare carefully, but you would also remain flexible, ready to change your route if you encounter unexpected obstacles or discover better paths. Your goal would guide you, but your immediate attention would be on responding skillfully to the actual conditions you encounter with each step. This is how to approach life with wisdom, he concludes, turning back to you. Have direction. Have intentions. Work to create beneficial conditions. But hold your plans lightly. Meet reality as it is, not as you think it should be. Trust that if you respond to each moment with awareness and kindness, you'll be moving in the right direction, even if the path looks different than you imagined. The morning has matured now. The coolness is giving way to gentle warmth. It's time to descend for the morning meal and meditation. As you begin the careful walk down, your teacher offers one final insight from this height. Remember this view when you're back in your daily life. When you feel overwhelmed by details, remember that from a higher perspective, everything is connected in a meaningful pattern. When you face what seems like an insurmountable obstacle, remember that from a higher vantage point, you might see a way around it. The understanding that everything happens for a reason isn't just a philosophical idea. It's a practical tool for navigating complexity with grace. The descent requires different attention than the climb, more caution, different muscles, awareness of gravity's pull. Each careful step reinforces the teaching, respond to conditions as they are. The steep section requires sideways steps. The loose gravel requires testing each foothold. The exposed route requires stepping over. No complaining about the terrain. Just working with it. Back at the monastery, the morning follows its familiar rhythm, but today everything feels infused with special significance. The last meditation session in this hall, the last meal in this dining room, the last walk through these gardens. Yet alongside this awareness of ending is a deeper recognition: nothing truly ends, everything transforms. This experience at Monk's Temple will become part of the conditions shaping your future experiences. The teachings will continue working in you long after you've left this physical place. Following the morning meditation, a particularly deep session where the entire hall seemed to breathe as one organism, your teacher invites you to the small room where you've had many of your conversations. Today, however, he has something different prepared. On the low table between you sits a simple wooden box. Before you leave, he says, I want to offer you some practical tools. Ways to maintain and deepen this understanding when you're no longer in the supportive environment of the monastery. He opens the box. Inside are several small items, each simple but meaningful. First, he takes out a small, smooth stone, similar to the one from the garden but with a single word carved in delicate script: remember. This is for your pocket or desk, he explains. When you touch it, let it remind you to pause and ask, what conditions are creating this moment? How am I responding? Next, he removes a small notebook with handmade paper. This is for what we call karma journaling. Not to record good deeds like some cosmic scorecard, but to practice seeing the play of cause and effect in your daily life. Each evening, write down 1 or 2 experiences from your day. Then reflect, what conditions led to this experience? How did my response affect what happened next? What might be the longer-term consequences of today's actions? This simple practice will train your mind to perceive the interconnected nature of reality. Third, he shows you a small string of wooden beads, a miniature version of the meditation malice some monks use. This has 9 beads, he explains. Each represents one of the steps in what I call the pause practice. When you encounter a challenging situation, you can move through these beads mentally or physically. 1. Pause. 2. Breathe. 3. Observe what's happening without judgment. 4. Ask, what conditions led to this? 5. Ask, what would happen if I resist this reality? 6. Ask, what response would create more beneficial conditions? 7. Choose a response. 8. Act. 9. Let go of attachment to outcome. This creates space between stimulus and response, the space where wisdom grows. Finally, he takes out what looks like a small, folded piece of parchment. Unfolded, it reveals a beautifully drawn circle divided into sections like a pie chart, but with no labels. This is an interdependence map, he explains. When you're facing a complex situation, a decision, a conflict, a problem, draw one of these in your journal. In the center, write the situation. In each section, write a different category of conditions that might be influencing it: personal history, current environment, other people's perspectives, social systems, economic factors, psychological patterns, physical health, etc. Then, for each category, jot down a few relevant conditions. This practice expands your perspective beyond the immediate what to the deeper why. It helps you see the web rather than just the knot. He places these items back in the box and closes it, then pushes it gently toward you. These are tools, not magic. They work only if you use them. But used consistently, they can help transform your understanding from an interesting idea into a lived reality. You feel deeply touched by the practicality and thoughtfulness of these gifts. They bridge the gap between monastery wisdom and daily life in a way that feels genuinely helpful. Thank you, you say, and the words feel inadequate for the depth of gratitude you feel. The greatest gift, your teacher responds with his characteristic gentle smile, is already within you, the capacity for awareness itself. These tools are just ways to remember what you already know. The midday meal that follows feels particularly poignant. You notice details you might have missed before, the precise way the cook monk's hands move as he serves the food, the particular sound of wooden bowls being placed on wooden tables, the pattern of sunlight through the high windows moving slowly across the floor as the meal progresses. Everything feels vivid, precious, temporary. You eat with complete attention, savoring each flavor as if it were your first and last experience of it. After the meal, during the rest period, instead of walking meditation, your teacher suggests something different. Let's visit the monastery's oldest tree, he says. There's wisdom there that predates all our teachings. The tree stands in a protected courtyard behind the main meditation hall, a massive, ancient pine whose trunk is wider than 3 people embracing. Its bark is deeply furrowed, like the lines on the oldest monk's face. Its branches spread in all directions, some so heavy they're supported by wooden posts. The tree feels not just alive but conscious in some fundamental way, as if it has witnessed centuries of human searching and has its own silent teaching to offer. We don't know exactly how old this tree is, your teacher says, laying a hand gently on the trunk. But it was already ancient when the first monks built this monastery around it. They could have cut it down to make space for buildings. Instead, they built around it, honoring its presence. This tree has survived storms, droughts, harsh winters, even a fire that once damaged part of the monastery. Each scar on its trunk represents conditions it has endured and adapted to. You both sit in the tree's shade, its vast canopy creating a circle of coolness in the afternoon heat. This tree embodies the teaching of dependent origination perfectly, your teacher continues. Every part of it exists in relationship with countless conditions. Its roots interact with specific soil composition, moisture levels, microorganisms. Its leaves exchange gases with the atmosphere. Its seeds have traveled on wind, been carried by birds. It provides shelter for countless creatures. It's not a separate tree so much as a nexus in a vast web of relationships. And it responds to changing conditions with remarkable intelligence, shedding needles during drought, growing more slowly during harsh years, reaching toward light when other trees shade it. He pauses, letting you absorb the tree's silent presence. When you understand that you, too, are such a nexus, not a separate self but a temporary convergence of countless streams of cause and effect, you begin to hold your identity more lightly. You stop taking everything so personally. You recognize that your thoughts, emotions, even your sense of self are conditioned phenomena, like leaves on this tree, arising, existing for a time, then falling away to make room for new growth. You look up through the branches at patches of blue sky. The tree doesn't seem to be struggling to be a tree. It simply is what it is, responding to conditions with perfect naturalness. Our suffering, your teacher says softly, comes largely from resisting this natural process. We want to be permanent in a world of impermanence. We want to be separate in an interconnected reality. We want to control conditions rather than respond to them. The tree doesn't have these problems. It simply grows according to conditions. A breeze stirs the branches, and the sound is like a gentle sigh, or perhaps like ancient laughter at human folly. As you prepare to leave, your teacher says, remember this tree. When you feel yourself tightening around an identity or a desire or a fear, remember that you are like this tree, part of a vast, intelligent unfolding. Your job isn't to control the unfolding, but to participate in it with awareness and kindness. The afternoon meditation session on this final day is dedicated to metta, loving-kindness practice. Your teacher explains that understanding interdependence naturally gives rise to compassion, but that compassion can be cultivated deliberately as well. When we truly see that everyone's actions arise from their conditioning, he says, it becomes harder to hold hatred or resentment. This doesn't mean we don't establish boundaries or work for justice. It means we do so with compassion rather than bitterness. He guides the meditation, beginning with offering loving kindness to yourself, then to loved ones, then to neutral people, then to difficult people in your life, and finally to all beings everywhere. The traditional phrases, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease, take on deeper meaning when framed within the understanding of dependent origination. Everyone is doing their best within their conditioning. Everyone deserves conditions that support safety, happiness, health, and ease. Your well-being and mine are not separate. As you practice, offering these wishes first to yourself, you notice any resistance that arises. The part of you that feels unworthy of such kindness. Your teacher's voice gently guides, see this resistance, too, as conditioned, arising from past experiences, from cultural messages, from habitual patterns. Offer kindness to the resistance itself. May even this be held in compassion. The meditation unfolds, layer by layer, until the distinctions between self and other soften. The wishes flow out and circle back. There's a sense of participating in a field of kindness that extends far beyond the meditation hall, far beyond the monastery, connecting with countless others practicing similar intentions across time and space. This, too, is dependent origination. The way conscious intention becomes a condition affecting not just your own mind but the subtle fabric of relationships around you. After the meditation, as evening approaches, you pack your few belongings. The simple wooden box with its practical tools goes into your bag alongside the small mala bracelet you've been wearing. The process of packing feels like a meditation in itself, each item considered, each fold of clothing done with attention. You're preparing to leave, but you're also preparing to carry something precious back into the world. Your final evening meal at Monk's Temple is marked by a special simplicity. The food is the same modest fare, but there's an unspoken feeling of completion in the air. The monks seem to move with extra gentleness, as if honoring the transition you're about to make. As you clean your bowl for the last time, you notice how the ritual has become familiar, almost comforting in its predictability. The warm water, the pickled vegetable, the careful wiping, the intention not to waste even a single grain. Each action done with full attention becomes a prayer of gratitude. After the meal, instead of the usual evening activities, the head monk invites everyone to gather in the main courtyard as the last light fades. Lanterns are lit, creating a circle of soft illumination. There's no formal ceremony, but there's a palpable sense of community. Several monks approach you quietly, offering small nods or brief words of encouragement. One elderly monk who has been silently tending the gardens every day places a single, perfect lotus flower in your hands. He doesn't speak, but his eyes hold a depth of understanding that needs no words. Your teacher stands beside you as the stars begin to appear. In the morning, you'll leave, he says quietly. But remember, leaving is just another form of arriving. You'll arrive back into your life with new eyes. The challenges won't have disappeared, but your relationship to them will have changed. That changes everything. He turns to face you directly, his expression both serene and intensely present. Let me offer final guidance for integrating these teachings. First, start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life at once. Choose one practice, perhaps the morning breathing, or the pause practice with the beads, or the evening reflection, and commit to it for 1 month. Let it take root. Second, be gentle with yourself. You'll forget. You'll fall back into old patterns. This isn't failure, it's part of the process. Each time you notice you've forgotten, you have an opportunity to remember again. That noticing is itself mindfulness. Third, find or create community. Even one person to share the journey with makes a tremendous difference. If you can't find such a person nearby, remember that you're part of a lineage that stretches back centuries. You're never truly alone in this practice. Fourth, remember that understanding why everything happens for a reason isn't about having all the answers. It's about being present with the questions. It's about meeting each moment with curiosity rather than certainty. The mystery remains. You just learn to appreciate it rather than fear it. Finally, he says, and now his voice holds a particular tenderness, trust the process. The understanding we've explored here isn't something you need to manufacture. It's the nature of reality itself. Your job is simply to remove the obstacles to recognizing what's already true. Like clearing clouds from the sky to reveal the sun that was always shining. The monastery bell rings for the final time during your stay. The clear tone that signals the transition to nighttime. Around you, monks begin moving toward their quarters. The day is complete. Rest well, your teacher says. Tomorrow's journey begins long before sunrise. That final night, sleep is different. There's no anxiety about departure, no desperate attempt to cling to the experience. There's simply a deep recognition that this, too, is part of the flow. The teachings have been received. Now they need to be lived. The real practice begins when you step outside the monastery gates. You wake in the deep darkness before dawn, the way you arrived. A young monk has already left a simple breakfast outside your door for your journey, some rice wrapped in leaves, a piece of fruit, a small container of tea. You eat mindfully, tasting each bite as if it contained the essence of the entire monastery experience. As the first hint of light appears in the sky, you make your final rounds. Not saying goodbye, but offering silent gratitude to the meditation hall, the gardens, the ancient tree, the paths you've walked. Each place holds memories now, but more importantly, each place has become part of your understanding. Your teacher meets you at the main gate, just as he met you on that first morning. The mountains are still silhouettes against a gradually lightening sky. The path down is the same as the path up, he says, but the traveler is different. He doesn't offer lengthy final words. Instead, he places his hands together in a gesture of respect and offers a slight bow. You return the gesture, feeling the profound simplicity of this moment. No drama, no grand farewells. Just one human being acknowledging another on the path. Everything happens for a reason, he says one last time. Remember to look for the reasons with curiosity rather than judgment. And remember that sometimes the reason is simply to bring you to greater wisdom and compassion. With that, he steps back, leaving the gateway clear. You take a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill your lungs. Then you step through the gate and onto the path that will lead you back down the mountain, back to your life, back to the world where these teachings will meet their true test. The descent is familiar yet new. You notice how your body remembers the way. Which stones are stable, where the path narrows, where the view opens up. The morning unfolds around you as you walk, birds waking, dew glistening on spiderwebs, the sky shifting through shades of dawn. Each step feels like a meditation, an opportunity to practice what you've learned. About halfway down, you stop at the same stream where you rested on your way up. The water flows exactly as it did before, yet completely different water. You kneel and drink from your hands, the cold clarity tasting like the essence of mountain itself. As you sit beside the stream, you take out the small stone from the wooden box, the one with "Remember" carved into it. You hold it in your palm, feeling its smooth surface, its slight weight. Remember what? Not just the teachings, but the fundamental truth they point to, that everything is connected, everything is in flux, everything arises from causes and conditions. You continue downward, and gradually signs of the ordinary world begin to appear, a distant road, cultivated fields, the sound of a vehicle. The transition from mountain solitude to human habitation feels less jarring than you expected. With your new understanding, you see the village not as separate from the monastery but as part of the same interdependent web. The farmers growing food, the merchants trading goods, the families living their lives. All responding to conditions, all creating conditions for others, all participating in the vast dance of cause and effect. You reach the village as morning activities are beginning, shopkeepers opening shutters, children heading to school, workers beginning their day. The bustling normalcy feels both foreign and intimately familiar. You find the small bus station and purchase a ticket for the journey back to the city, back to your home, your work, your relationships, your life. As you wait for the bus, sitting at the same small tea shop where you waited before going up to the monastery, you practice the mindfulness you've been taught. The taste of the tea. The sound of conversation around you. The feeling of the wooden bench beneath you. The anticipation of return mixed with gratitude for what you've received. All of it, the pleasant, the unpleasant, the neutral, just experience arising according to conditions. The bus arrives with a puff of diesel fumes and the squeal of brakes. You board, find a window seat, and watch as the village recedes, then the mountain road unfolds, then gradually the landscape transforms from rural to suburban to urban. The monastery mountains become a blue silhouette on the horizon, then disappear entirely behind other hills, then behind buildings. But something has shifted that cannot disappear. It's not that you have all the answers now. It's that you've learned to be with the questions differently. You've learned to see patterns where you once saw randomness, to recognize your participation in creating your experience, to meet difficulty with curiosity rather than resistance, to appreciate the extraordinary depth of ordinary moments. You arrive back in the city in late afternoon. The contrast is dramatic, the noise, the pace, the sheer quantity of stimuli. For a moment, you feel overwhelmed. Then you remember the pause practice. You take one bead on the small mala bracelet, pause. Another, breathe. Another, observe without judgment. The overwhelm doesn't disappear, but it no longer controls you. You see it as a conditioned response to a sudden change in conditions, from mountain quiet to city bustle. You breathe. You choose how to respond. Walking from the bus station to your home, you notice everything with fresh eyes. The traffic isn't just noise. It's the movement of people with purposes, with stories, with conditioning leading them to this moment on this street. The buildings aren't just structures, they're manifestations of countless decisions, labors, materials, designs converging. Even the litter on the sidewalk tells a story about consumption, disposal systems, social norms, individual choices. You arrive at your building, climb the stairs to your apartment, unlock the door. Everything is exactly as you left it, yet nothing looks the same. The objects in your home no longer feel like mere possessions, they feel like convergences of relationships, the chair from a certain store made by certain workers from trees that grew somewhere, the book from a particular author published by a particular company, the photograph of people whose lives have intersected with yours. Everything connected. Everything holding stories of causes and conditions. You unpack simply. You place the wooden box with its tools on your desk where you'll see it daily. You put the lotus flower from the elderly monk in a small bowl of water. You change into comfortable clothes. Then you sit in the chair by the window and simply breathe, allowing the transition to settle. The first test comes sooner than expected. Your phone, charged after days of silence, begins buzzing with messages, missed calls, emails, reminders of responsibilities you'd put aside. Your initial impulse is anxiety, a feeling of being behind, of needing to catch up immediately. But you remember the teaching, what conditions are creating this experience? The conditions, returning after being away, accumulated communications, cultural conditioning that says you must always be productive and responsive. What would happen if I resist this reality? More stress, feeling overwhelmed, perhaps reacting hastily. What response would create more beneficial conditions? You decide to scan the messages briefly, identify anything truly urgent, and schedule time tomorrow to address things systematically. The anxiety softens. You're working with conditions rather than being controlled by them. That evening, you prepare a simple meal, eating with the same mindfulness you practiced at the monastery. The food tastes different, not because it's different food, but because you're different in how you're eating it. You notice flavors, textures, the experience of nourishment. After eating, you take out the notebook and do your first karma journal entry. You write about the transition from monastery to city, about the moment of overwhelm at the bus station, about your response. You reflect on the conditions that led to the overwhelm, how your response affected your experience, what you might learn for similar transitions in the future. The simple act of writing creates clarity. Before bed, you sit for just 10 minutes of meditation, not trying to replicate the deep stillness of the monastery, but simply being present with whatever arises. The sounds of the city through your window, the feeling of your body in the chair, the thoughts about tomorrow. Everything allowed to be as it is. Everything seen as conditioned, impermanent, not self. You sleep deeply, and in the morning, you begin your new routine. Not with frantic checking of messages, but with 3 conscious breaths before even getting out of bed. Then a few minutes of sitting meditation. Then a mindful breakfast. Then looking at your schedule with the question, how can I approach today in a way that creates beneficial conditions for myself and others? The days unfold. You return to work. You reconnect with friends and family. Life resumes its normal rhythms. But woven through everything is this new thread of understanding. You don't talk about it much, it feels too intimate, too easily misunderstood. But you live it. At work, when a project encounters unexpected obstacles, instead of frustration and blame, you find yourself asking, what conditions created this situation? How can we work with these conditions to create a better outcome? The shift is subtle but powerful. Colleagues notice you're calmer under pressure, more creative in problem solving. You're not just fighting fires. You're looking at what's creating the conditions for fires. In relationships, when misunderstandings arise, you find yourself more curious about the other person's perspective, what conditions might be shaping their view, what experiences might be informing their reactions. This doesn't mean you don't have boundaries or don't express your own needs. It means you do so with more understanding and less reactivity. Conflicts don't disappear, but they become opportunities for deeper connection rather than just battles to win or lose. With yourself, you become more compassionate. When you notice old patterns of self-criticism or anxiety, you don't add another layer of judgment about having those patterns. You simply notice, this pattern is arising. What conditions support it? How can I respond with kindness rather than resistance? The patterns don't magically vanish, but their hold weakens. They're just conditioned phenomena, not defining truths. Weeks pass, then months. The specific memories of the monastery begin to blur at the edges, but the understanding becomes more integrated, more natural. You don't always remember to pause. You sometimes get caught in reactivity. But each time you notice, you come back with gentleness. The practice isn't about perfection, it's about return. One rainy Sunday afternoon, 3 months after your return, you're washing dishes after a simple lunch. Warm water, soap bubbles, the repetitive motion. Suddenly, Awareness sharpens in a way that feels both utterly ordinary and completely extraordinary. You're not just washing dishes, you're participating in a miracle. The water flowing from pipes that connect to treatment plants that connect to rivers that connect to rain cycles. The soap made from ingredients sourced from around the world through complex supply chains. The plate itself, manufactured somewhere, transported, purchased, used countless times. Your hands performing this action because of neurological processes, muscle memory, intention. And the awareness itself, this luminous knowing, arising from conditions too mysterious to comprehend, yet knowing itself in this simple moment. In that instant, the teaching becomes not something you believe but something you are. Everything happens for a reason according to conditions. Not as philosophy, but as lived reality. The separate self dissolves into interconnected process. Time expands to include all causes leading to this moment and all effects flowing from it. There's no division between sacred and ordinary. Washing dishes is as profound as temple meditation when done with full awareness. The moment passes, as all moments do. But something has shifted permanently. The understanding has moved from your head to your bones. That evening, you take out the interdependence map from the wooden box. You've used it occasionally for work decisions or personal dilemmas. Tonight, you draw one just for the experience of washing dishes. In the center, you write, washing dishes, afternoon awareness. In the sections, you jot down categories of conditions. Physical, warm water, soap, hands, neural pathways. Historical, learning to wash dishes as a child, purchasing these particular dishes. Economic, global trade making soap available. Environmental, water cycle, infrastructure. Psychological, intention to be mindful, memory of monastery teachings. Temporal, Sunday afternoon leisure, and so on. The web expands, touching everything. The ordinary act reveals itself as the convergence of the universe. You smile. This is the understanding. Everything connected. Everything meaningful. Everything happening for reasons according to conditions that stretch back to the beginning of time and forward to its end. And in the midst of it all, this precious human awareness that can recognize the pattern, that can choose to participate with wisdom and kindness. Before bed, you sit by your window looking at the city lights. Each light represents lives being lived. Joys and sorrows, challenges and triumphs, all arising from causes and conditions, all creating new conditions. You feel not separate from this tapestry but woven into it. Your actions matter because they affect the whole. Others' actions matter because they affect you. We're all in this together, doing our best within our conditioning, capable of awakening to our interconnected nature. You take 3 conscious breaths, feeling the air move in and out, feeling your body alive in this moment. Then you prepare for sleep, knowing that even dreams will be part of the unfolding, offering their own teachings if met with awareness. As you drift toward sleep, the last conscious thought is not a concept but a felt sense, gratitude. For the teachers who preserved these teachings across centuries. For the monks who maintained places of practice. For your own capacity to learn and grow. For the mysterious, intelligent unfolding of reality that brings everything into being for reasons that ultimately serve awakening. Everything happens for a reason. This is not a promise that life will be easy or that suffering won't occur. It is the recognition that within every experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, lies the potential for wisdom. That every cause contains its effect, and every effect becomes a new cause in the endless dance of creation. That we are not separate entities struggling in an indifferent universe, but participants in a vast, intelligent process that is always, in every moment, inviting us to wake up. Sleep comes. The body rests. The mind dreams. The heart remains open. And in the darkness, understanding continues its silent work, weaving wisdom into the fabric of your being, preparing you for whatever conditions tomorrow will bring.